My name is Steve Audette, and I work for Frontline, the documentary editor. Basically, they had gathered all the material by the time I was brought in. As the editor, I'm usually brought in at the end of the process after they've done their research, after they've gathered their interviews, after they've collected all their stock footage. They know what the story is. And so then they come into the room with me and we make it into a cohesive piece. In this case, I think Retro Report and Frontline decided to make a historical piece about Gitmo because Frontline was producing a piece about modern day Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. They discovered this piece the story back in the 90s where Haitians were brought there and basically set up as a detention camp until they knew what to do with because of the civil unrest in Haiti. And as you know from the story, things got complicated because it was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic in America. We start with a very rough draft of a script, and that rough draft includes sound bites from interviews, it includes actuality from the stock footage, it includes radios or news reports that were gathered from the time period, and we slowly start building it right from the beginning, a scene. So we try to say, okay, how do we want to depict this? What you do is you try to figure out how to tell a story, and it's no different than basically the same storytelling techniques that have been around since campfire days. That you sit around and discuss, you have your journalism is intact, your research is impeccable, and you take those facts and you weave a story and you try to make it emotional and informative and it's hopefully to some degree entertaining. And that's sort of how we did it. And that process took about 3 or 4 months, but for me it was only, I think, 3 weeks of editing for that piece. Lucky enough to have the producing team from Retro Report were outstanding, and they were able to sift through a lot of this media and actually make selects that made the process a lot simpler. So I probably started with a 30 to 40 minute sort of assembly of here are all the good bits that we have, and then we kind of polished that or shrunk that down to 15 minutes, not only because that was the slot that we were aiming for in terms of the broadcast time, but also because, in fact, the story it got a little long, anything more than about 15 or 20 minutes. So it actually made sense to do that. But at first, the 40-minute piece had everything in it, but it was unwatchable and not very entertaining, and would have been probably lots of people would have turned the television to watch something else. So at 15 minutes, it was tight and concise, and you got the story, you got the emotion, and it was entertaining at the same time. The most difficult part was trying to humanize the Haitians. We only had one interview with a woman who was there, and so we didn't want to just go to her. It was tricky to try to show whenever we could the hundreds of people that's affected and not just keep it just to her story, but yet she was the thread. She was sort of like our first person account, so she was always coming in and out of the story. And we always tried to bring it back to the larger story. And of course, the legal aspect was like another thread we were trying to carry. In fact, the legal stuff became tricky because doing films about law can get pretty dry and pretty, for lack of a better word, boring pretty quickly because law is academic. The plight of these Haitians is anything but academic. So it was interesting to try to wrestle with that down. So I'd say the most difficult thing was trying to keep it into an emotional story, a personal story, and not get too bogged down in the legal aspects of the story. What you're trying to do is bring the viewer from the couch and into the world of the characters in your story. So the more compelling the video, the easier that is. It also helps to have great writing. Even though it's not a print form, writing is still very important to help be concise and increase people's interest. If it was a longer piece, if we were going to try to make it a longer piece, I might have tried to get some more characters in there from the Haitians' perspective and from the lawyer's perspective. Like, as you look at it, we really have very few characters in the film. And so, but no, I think for 15 minutes, I think it was just about right. Honestly, I really do. I think it turned out really good, and I'm really proud of it. That's a tricky part. You balance that out. You try to balance out how much information can I really pack in and how much information, if I leave it out, how lost will someone be if it's not even presented. So it's always a balancing act. If you have VHS material, if the material is compelling, it doesn't matter how terrible the signal or the video looks. If the story is compelling and the images are compelling in terms of their narrative, then you can go with it. So it doesn't matter to me what kind of camera a person has, but I do think what matters is you need to know how to edit. And the only way to edit footage down is to edit footage. You can't experience the trials and tribulations of storytelling without having an editor, even if that's yourself, compile the footage and reduce it and try to make it as compelling as possible. The other thing is I would recommend is that people write, that they write words and that they write a lot, because even though there isn't a lot of narration in that piece, it's all those words are very important, and a lot of time was spent on that. I think the thing to remember for up-and-coming, I like to call them documentarians, but maybe you can use the word journalist if you want, is that there will come a time, guaranteed, there will come a time when your opportunity to do your best work will come, where you'll be able to move from a student to a professional, basically. That opportunity is going to happen at some point. At some point, you will be on the right street corner at the right time for that to happen. However, for you to be able to take hold of that opportunity, for you to be able to capitalize on it and become a professional or become noted for your work, the following things need to happen. You have to be completely prepared in your medium. It's not an on-the-job training thing. You have to already have made films, you have already done some journalistic reporting, and you have to be dogged in your commitment to be skeptical and focused on your goals. Skeptical about what you're being told by others, but focused on your goals to become a journalist or a documentarian. But if you do those things, if you're prepared, if you're focused on your goals, and you're skeptical of what's being told, you will make a great journalist, and your opportunity will come. No question about it in my mind.